Bienvenidos, everyone. Hello, welcome. My name is Raul Carvajal. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Susanna. She's already said who I am and what I do, so let's just get into it. I'd love to introduce our guest speaker in this fireside chat, Jamil. Hey, Jamil, how are you?
Hey, Raul, great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Thanks for joining me on this conversation. The title of the session, Ambient Play, Blurring the Lines Between Our Fiction and Reality. I'm a big fan of a lot of the work that you're doing, Jamil, right now at Hexagram. I'd love to, kind of paint a picture for the audience as to what it is that y'all are up to. So if you wouldn't mind just defining that for us up front and what it's like to work at Hexagram day to day.
Certainly. The Hexagram is an immersive experience developer, and the main thing that we rely on to help explain what that is to a general audience is the phenomenon of ARGs, or alternate reality games. This was a form of storytelling that debuted about 10 years ago that involved interactivity, but also community coming together to participate in a narrative. And what happened was you would find a clue in the real world and follow down a rabbit hole on the internet, either on your phone or on the web or through a video platform, and find yourself solving puzzles that were relevant to you. So it kind of used reality as another platform, and yet all of the familiar access points to create a kind of entertainment. And what happened from there was that a lot of video game core loops, design loops, were used to help engage the player. For example, providing rewards, puzzle solving, scavenger hunts, where you would find an object and it would lead to another object. The basics here enabled Hexagram actually created one of these called Alpha Archive. And that became an iOS app as well that allowed you to directly access into the story. And the success of that enabled the company to create immersive experiences, as the greater term of art became known, for a larger number of branded partners, such as Microsoft and 20th Century Fox and other major media and technology companies. And over time, this evolved to use a lot of what we've recently started calling ambient technology. For example, personalization, when you're shopping online and information starts coming to you that is targeted at you, or you're out and about and your phone indicates that there's a cool new pop-up store that's opened up. So location data, all of this sort of thing that we take for granted in our ordinary lives is now integrated into these types of game experiences. So that the objective here is that we want to help enable a larger segment of the population to participate in these games without necessarily feeling that they have to continuously interact to get a response out of the game. Instead, you're able to ambiently participate and have your personal identity and participation reflected back at you at a pace that works for you. So in a way, we're taking both game elements and story elements and imbuing them with modern internet connectivity to create something that feels like you've stepped into a world. And ultimately, that's the reason we want to do this, is that we want to help fans step into the worlds they love.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so rad to think about this form that for me and in the last 10 years, as you've said, has really kind of started as almost a marketing tool or a way to really engage new audiences with entertainment IP and start thinking about it as a storytelling form in and of itself, right? So I'm really happy to hear that teams such as yours are kind of pushing that. I'd like to just plug maybe the earliest ARG that I encountered, which was, I think we spoke about this, the Heroes ARG for the NBC show some time ago. And I just remember getting so wrapped up in seeing clues on the show that then turned into discussions online on forums that then also turned into webcomics and other websites and codes that you would get wrapped up in, and suddenly this puzzle, right, that starts unfolding. And I wanted to kind of touch on that because it seems like a through line that I see in lots of ARGs where there's something to uncover, right? There's a mystery
Yeah.
that you and a community are solving together. And I wonder whether or not you've thought about that specific piece of the community engagement, that there's a problem we're trying to solve together. And how do you guys think about that,
Yes.
that hexagram?
Yes. That's a great observation, Raul. The idea of mystery is such a rich area for storytelling. You see it in linear storytelling. You see it in books, mystery novels, and you also see it in games. You see it in games that kind of lean into the interactive storytelling potential. For example, when games kind of pick up the film noir aspects, or they pick up adventure serial aspects, and then you see that there is a mystery to solve, and then it becomes something that you as an individual become engaged in. But the other part of what you said is I think almost more powerful, which is the idea of working together with a community to solve something, to advance an understanding of a particular aspect of a story that matters to you. And you're seeing that more and more in the immersive experiences that are available today. The other thing that you mentioned that is also relevant is that ARGs definitely did begin as kind of a marketing vehicle. They were basically free to play. You would jump into them, and then there you were. And the benefit was measured in terms of marketing metrics of how well the show responded after that, or sales of ice cream at Baskin Robbins, for example. We did an immersive experience for Stranger Things that had those kinds of metrics come out of it. The interesting transition, though, that we're seeing is that this type of technology, this type of development, this type of interactivity is making its way into a variety of different endpoints. So, for example, live venues, like we did one with Meow Wolf before the pandemic, and we provided technology to help drive a story through one of their experiences. And there are a number of ways that live venues are looking to kind of re-engage their audiences and find ways to reach them without them having to come to the park or having to come to the museum. And so having a kind of virtual experience that allows participants to join the experience is kind of a new area that is coming online now, and that is starting to become a direct paid for aspect. So it's kind of emerging from a purely marketing option to being something that is direct content.
Amazing. I wonder whether or not we can just expand on maybe a real world example. And you mentioned the Scoops Ahoy piece earlier, just to maybe walk through what the experience might have felt like for somebody who was engaging with it in an optimal scenario, just so that our audience can get a bit more of a tangible understanding. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. I Raul, this comes up so much. I end up going straight into the details, and it's so helpful to actually describe what it is up front. So thank you for reminding me to do that. So Stranger Things is a very popular show on Netflix, and hopefully this isn't a spoiler, but the third season involved a fictional ice cream shop in the mall. And of course, if you're a child of the 80s, this is just, bringing our world to life already through a television show. And we worked with a number of partners, Missing Pieces and Baskin Robbins, and of course Netflix, to help create an immersive way to step into that world of Stranger Things. And so this fictional ice cream shop, Scoops Ahoy, became reality in that Baskin Robbins converted several of their stores into a literal Scoops Ahoy. And there were fans lined up around the block for the various installations that we did. And when they got in there, they found a clue to this mystery, to this Russian espionage scenario. And when they went home and started searching up these clues, they found that they had access to a literal 80s telnet server. And that by going into this telnet server, they would find that they were being communicated to through a chatbot to pursue and help on unraveling this Soviet surveillance operation. And that they would find that dimensional gates were opening up all over the world. And they now had this urgency to help address this situation. And people would individually pursue this, solve puzzles, and they would collectively solve puzzles. And the whole time, this is being live operated like a mobile game, where there is a dungeon master of sorts who is helping to provide context and outcomes on each of the daily puzzles. This would run for 10 days, and the participants would get increasingly interested and even further down the rabbit hole. And this used a variety of the technologies and design elements that we've been talking about up to this point. And at the end of it, the people that had the most success in the game were rewarded with a lifetime supply of Baskin-Robbins ice cream.
Amazing.
So this was tremendously impactful, not only for the lines around the block, but from Netflix's standpoint. The expectation was to have something on the order of tens of thousands of impressions, but there were 500,000 chat conversations going on about this, and the game was nominated for an Emmy when it was live. So we were just kind of, honestly, just kind of blown away by the response, and it kind of illustrates how much fans want to live in those worlds, how much they want to participate. You see it in a number of different ways. You see it in cosplay. People are increasingly becoming much more interested in creating costumes where, they may not otherwise have had any interest or talent in that regard. And now they're coming together to figure this out. They're creating their theory videos on YouTube. They're streaming their experiences of watching and playing the shows and games of their experiences, of their passions. And you see it in fan fiction as well. The fans are really interested in figuring out a way to be in that world. And what media partners and streaming platforms are starting to really come to seek out is a way to provide a landing spot or a lobby for those fans to live in and enjoy until the show continues.
And I recognize that there's even another step to this as well, right? Where it's more than simply wanting to immerse oneself in some of these properties that they know and love and are huge fans of. But we used this term earlier in our conversations around like decentralized authorship, right? Like they want to somehow be a part of the narrative or even guide the narrative in some ways. I know that Dispatches from Elsewhere kind of took this in its own kind of route as well, where it was directly embedding some of the actions of the community into the show itself. I wonder if you can talk about that briefly.
Totally, yes. So that level of participation really ups the ante, because what we were talking about with the Stranger Things game was a 10-day exercise that was largely, shall we say, traditional in terms of using chatbots, in terms of using ARG mechanics. The things that were were much more current day, shall we say, are the idea of having it live operated and having a kind of this interactive cycle and being able to completely simulate 80s tech in an authentic way. With Dispatches from Elsewhere, we took it to the next level, so to speak. We put out a call at universities and different locations where people would find a clue to participate in a study that would visualize people's dreams. So it was this kind of science fiction-y hook, but it seemed plausible enough based on where we were putting out the call. And so about 5,000 people responded and created their own videos, because part of what you do for this is that you record a video of saying a set number of key phrases, and then the lab would convert that into a visualization of your dreams. And so people would upload these videos, and they would in turn get clues as to what was going on with this show, and that it was actually something that was impacting what was happening in the show itself. This involved reality again in the creation of this van that would be going across the country. And I don't want to give away spoilers from the show, but basically there is a mystery involved that the van is involved with trying to solve. And the van eventually showed up at one of the participants' house. Now, the participant was an actor, but the rest of the players weren't aware of this. And then that participant, the actor, was brought into the story and became part of the reveal and the narrative of the show. At the same time, the show has random weird phrases that pop up in full view, like a bumper sticker that doesn't quite make sense. But fans of the show are seeing that phrase and then searching it online, and then finding themselves in a chatbot conversation. And so there are a number of ways that this is all wrapping up together and ends up with, again, trying to avoid spoilers, but ties into the finale reveal of the show. And through this means, we were able to use a streaming video platform as a new way of bringing players into an experience. And again, something that is extremely accessible. That's one of the things that kind of makes an immersive experience work, is that it is broadly accessible to anyone who consider themselves a fan of something. You don't have to be a gamer. It's using all of the systems that are in our daily lives today. Everything that we are already comfortable and familiar with, like we use messaging apps. So in this way, we can have an AI chatbot continue a conversation with you that is highly personalized and feed you clues about where the adventure is going. And so it feels very real, because this is how we communicate with everybody else in our daily lives. And it just happens to be that you're communicating with a game.
And so all of these technologies that you're mentioning, right, the systems that are already around us, and the attempt to truly meet the potential player where they are, all of this really feeds into, I know, this internal concept that you all have and design around this ambient play, right, that our session is named after. I wonder whether or not you can expand on that.
Absolutely. Yes. So that's something that we have been kind of putting the blocks in place for over time, which is the idea that a lot of video games have a kind of lean in aspect to it, where you are manipulating what's happening on screen. You're seeing the impact immediately. You have to respond in real time, and in many cases, they're kind of life and death consequences. And so there's kind of this heightened level of engagement, and there's a certain commitment that you have to make as a player, even as a gamer, or as a kind of a regular person, I suppose. I don't know what's the opposite of a gamer, but it is a level of entertainment that is lean in. Whereas watching a television show, turning on Netflix or Disney Plus at 9 p.m., you're leaning back to enjoy a television show, to be told a story and to enjoy it, and a television show or a movie relies on great direction, great writing to create that sense of immersion. So what we're looking at is taking elements from both worlds, as well as theme parks, as well as magic, as well as a lot of and internet technology and networking, to help find a middle ground between lean forward, lean in, and lean back. So ambient play is then using a lot of the personalized information, a lot of your location information, and using AI. And as well as using persistence. So the actions that you take in the game world, they don't necessarily have an immediate response, but they have a cumulative response. So you and all of the other players are in small ways impacting the reality and fabric of that world, so that the next time you jump into it, you see that it's changed. And you see that you have had an impact on it as well. And that aspect of it is kind of a deeply embedded element of human beings, where we like to do a certain amount of crafting, we like to do a certain amount of persistent activity, and we like to see that our contributions are noted and count for something. So ambient play brings together some of these game design loops, some of these technologies, and also, you still need great writing. You still need a world that feels immersive. And so the objective for us, the way we kind of measure this, is that we want to make sure you feel like you're not looking through a window, because that's what linear media does, but you have the opportunity to kind of step in and kind of poke your head around and see what's there. And ultimately, that is our goal, to help create the sense that you are in this world that you love. Now, part of it, what we're talking about mostly is existing worlds, existing story worlds. But this, of course, applies to original content as well. I'm simply using the idea of fans because they're already vested in that world. And I don't know about, well, actually, I do know because we talked about it already in our earlier chats. But there's also this thread of longing that exists in fans of huge successful worlds, where they read the Lord of the Rings books when they were kids, or they read the Foundation trilogy, or they saw Star Wars and they had their action figures, and you were creating your own stories on your own in your bedroom or with your friends. You would play after school, and and there has to be a way to help people feel like they're back in those worlds. And so that's what we're aiming at.
So as we come to the last couple minutes here, I want to make sure that we leave some room for speculation potentially for the audience, right? We've got 10 years of this latest incarnation of ARGs, let's say. What are you hoping for in the next 10 years? And what are you excited that Hexagram can keep pushing on in this media?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that has been really eye-opening to me, and I'm sure a lot of folks during the pandemic, is that our streaming video on demand platforms, our Netflix, our Disney Plus, our HBO Max, all of these, Amazon Video, Apple TV Plus, all of these give a lot of opportunity to storytelling. They've opened the doors on content. It's really become a content market for content creators. And content, I mean, I've now used that word, I think, 5 times in a row, but it's a clinical way of describing storytelling, that the options for storytelling are huge at this point. And the fact that these are all streaming platforms, that we're interacting with them through a remote control type device, means that, and the fact that these are all audiences that are in one place at one time and accessing one dashboard at one time, I think gives a huge opportunity to introduce an ambient game or interactivity or an ambient experience directly on that platform. And you have you are seeing this in bits and pieces. For example, when Netflix introduced Bandersnatch, which was a choose your own adventure style game, that was, I think, the shot heard around the world, where you could have a game-like experience stood up on a streaming video platform, and it would be accessible to that lean back audience, and it would be something that would be accessible in play. Very simple way to play these games, and not necessarily have to be a gamer to play them. and it ties into a fiction that people care about. So, and you're also starting to see that on Disney Plus, like they introduced Star Wars Biomes, which was kind of a fly through of a Star Wars universe. Uh, it didn't quite have interactivity yet, but I think there's a huge opportunity here and a huge willingness to stand up additional types of storytelling and world building and world habitation, shall we say, uh, uh, as part of that subscription, as part of that experience, so that when the show ends, the story continues.
Amazing. Well, I do want to make sure that we are leaving enough time for questions. I'm sure that our audience is going to be extremely curious to follow up with you, Jamil. So maybe you want to pitch a way for folks to see what Hexagram's got next. Where can they learn more about your upcoming projects?
Well, a lot of what we do is under wraps, but you can definitely check out our website, which is hexagram.io. And you can follow us on Twitter at hexagram.io. And those are probably good ways that we can interact. Twitter, I would actually strongly recommend because we follow, we track that closely, and we're always looking for feedback there.
Amazing. Okay, well, great. I recognize that we're coming to the end of our time here. I want to make sure that I plug the Q&A room that we're going to be in. We are going to be in the Spark Q&A room. So folks, if you've got questions for Jamil or for me, we'll be in there in just a moment. And thank you again so much for having this conversation. I could talk about this stuff for hours, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you here at the Games for Change Festival. Thank you, Jamil.
Thank you, Raul, and thank you, Susanna and the team.
Awesome. See you, everyone.